Welcome back to our series with Rae Bonney. If you missed part one, make sure you go back and listen to it here on the playlist, or if you're watching it live, or yesterday on Monday. But today we're going to explore the profound impact of male role models on young boys and the importance of nurturing healthy masculine identities. Tomorrow when we come back for part 3, we're going to delve into Rae's insights of trauma, healing and personal transformation. So make sure you come back for that too. Enjoy the episode here on part 2 with Rae Bonney.
It's a real nod in the right direction, having the importance and relevance of men's health recognised at such a high level. It was really meaningful for me, and very proud to have been the recipient and the carrier of the messages. So this week the ceremony did happen at Government House here in Victoria, because I'm in Victoria.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and it was so the family came along, not George. George streamed in from London, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it was something quite remarkable and very special to be part of.
Absolutely incredible. Massive congratulations. So let's talk about how you got it. What work have you done over the years? Why the government felt you deserved that award then?
Well, I wasn't nominated, and I'm not sure who I was nominated by. I do know that the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and men's sheds were referees. Men's sheds are, I'm very involved in men's sheds all around the world, actually.
Wow.
And have been for many years. So I don't know who the originator was, but again, when I got back from overseas and I was still amidst this kerfuffle, being the robbery, I had a call from the governor's office, and it was a missed call. And I thought, wonder what that's about. And they said to me, we've been chasing you since June or July about your nomination for an Order of Australia. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Who am I nominating? And they said, it's you. And I said, no, who is it? And they said, it's you. And it took them quite some convincing. I was going, how could this be? Anyway, so that was that, and I had to accept it. And it came to January, and I think I told you this when we had a conversation, but I haven't really told anyone else. But I rang them back in January before the announcement on Australia Day, and I said, just checking, are you sure? And they said, yes, you again. Yes, we're sure it is you. So it was, yes.
The person probably got off the phone going, I don't know if she wants this award.
Give her an award for, for the most, whatever that word is. But no, it is really something that the next part of it for me, in fact, I was having, it was amazing being in a room with so many other recipients as well, and just seeing what a wonderful award it is that really raises up people in doing well in the community and doing for others. And you hear the stories of other people. And I was sitting next to a woman who'd done a lot of work in community for making music programs for disadvantaged children. Remarkable stuff, really life-changing things. And she said to me that she didn't accept her award originally because she didn't feel like she deserved it. And, I said, well, how, we chatted about it. And then she said, well, so I'm going to get the award, and so that will be it. And I said, why is that it? And she said, well, what can I do? I said, well, we're about to have a federal election, and I'm pretty sure, like me, you've received a lot of letters from members of parliament congratulating you. I said, well, my focus is, given that when the budget was just recently announced, there is still very, very little funding for men's health. I think over the last 4 years, $1.4 billion has gone towards health, and about 2% of that has gone towards men's health. So I don't need to say much more about that. So my job now with this very honourable award is to go back to these politicians and say, thank you very much, appreciate your congratulations. Now here is an agenda for men's health for the upcoming election. We need to be able to balance this out a bit. It's not certainly to the exclusion of supporting women. it's about including men as a priority as well, given our rates of suicide and preventable death.
Yeah. What attracts you in particular to working with men's health as a whole?
It's something that really happened very early in my life, and I wasn't really aware. I knew my why. I left home and school when I was just 15, because living in that environment was not going to be sustainable for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, and men were perpetrators of violence, various forms of violence when I was a child, and coming out of there, I just remember just having this burning question: what happened to them to make them like that? And it wasn't until I started really reflecting on things as I moved through life that I was born in the late 60s, so really was growing up in the early 70s, and I was seeing things like at school, I was seeing boys being beaten by their peers, beaten by their teachers. Corporal punishment was still, a thing. You'd see these, you just have visions of these angry teachers just beating boys with whips and whatever they could find. And then at home, I watched my own brother being raised in a way that was just so frightening to watch. Not just physical abuse, but, mental humiliation and degradation. And then we're watching all these troops, these young boys marching off to Vietnam at the same time. And then, the mining industry starts happening and the men are just being sent there, and workplace deaths are happening. We're seeing things like the Westgate Bridge collapse where there's no protection and all these men died. And just on and on and on, just seeing these examples of what I would probably deem as male disposability, because when men are being sent, sent to war, sent to the mines, sent up poles, sent out into weather, sent to protect, there's kind of like there's an expectation that you might not come back. And that's kind of okay, because you'll be deemed a hero or you'll be deemed as brave. And, I think that really burns brightly in me, because, now we're seeing these men at a much later age. These men are now sort of in their, 70s, 80s, 90s. And, I was up at visiting a men's shed in Wangaratta, which is northern Victoria here, a few weeks ago. And I was sitting with these men, and, versions were two were on oxygen, because of their occupation, because, where they started work as very, very young boys in trades where there's no protection, and they've raised families and they've been farmers, and then they get to this age and they're literally physically and mentally broken. That's why I love the men's shed so much, because they just serve such a safe place of community for men who really, really have each other's back. I could give you a million other reasons as well why, but that's probably the foundation for where I just continually get more and more inspiration from.
Yeah. So with the men's behaviour, going off the experience that you could see the boys at your age, aligning your peers, your family members, or the children at school, what, comparing that to now, then where's men's health? Because I didn't get beaten as a child. I'm 41, and obviously that doesn't happen to my son, but we still have teenagers and boys now ending their lives by suicide, and we have young men suffering with mental health. I call it decline. I don't know if it's the right terminology. It's just something I've kind of got used to. But a lot of men's mental health is it because we're talking about it more? What do you see going wrong with men's mental health now for the younger generations, maybe 25 and younger?
The human condition is affected by many things. So if you completely, go broadly in general on that, to the human condition, it will get affected by a whole range of things.
Yeah.
We all have different levels of resilience and things like that. That will also determine how we come out of that. And then if you go from the human condition to environments, and in my work on global action on men's health, I'm the vice chair there. So we represent all countries of the world around men and boys' health. So you look at in country environments, men's health looks very, very different, say, in Malawi in Africa than it does in the UK. Very, very different. Some similar social determinants that affect, but generally, there's quite different. So it's a big question to ask. But, in terms of mental health, we recently wrote a paper at Global Action on Men's Health that we did a study around looking at policy gaps in men's mental health around the world. There is hardly anything that addresses men's mental health in any policy in any country. So there lies an opportunity for countries to step up, to start, if we can create policy for men's mental health, we can affect change. So, mental health also, mental health is part of what we are. People deem, translate, narrate mental health as something that's negative, but mental health, like physical health, has a state of wellness to it. So good mental health or poor mental health. For me, I live with mental health challenges, but my mental health is very, very healthy because I really take care of it. And, I live in a country where I have access to great resources to manage my own mental health.
Yeah.
So for that, I'm very, very lucky. But, many people listening to this podcast will maybe have heard of or have even seen the current Netflix series called Adolescence. And, there's a lot of talk about that around, the world's picked us. I mean, even I think the UK government has picked it up and looking at that piece of art to start making policy for men and boys' health, which is frightening to think that we're looking at this one element of men or boys and running like mad things to try and create something based on a movie. Now, that movie was also based, there was a lot of research that was drawn from experts around the world to inform what was in that movie. But you can only put so much in a series.
Yeah.
You can't cover everything. And, I don't want to get into the incel piece because I'm not an expert on it. But it's, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that boys who are involved in those environments will have mental health challenges, and that could be derived from there is some evidence to support that many of those boys experience neurodiversity, which can also have them connected through to bullying and that cause mental health problems, which cause isolation, so there's lots of different factors involved. I think that series could not possibly cover, but it is one example of what's happening with boys. Mental health, you talk about, men and mental health. One thing that is a major contributor to one of the most serious men's health outcomes, which is suicide, is that most male suicide is not attributable to a mental health problem in its origin. Most of it is associated with, what I call a trifecta, which is relationship breakdown followed by financial distress, followed by custody of kids issues. So men don't need mental health support. They need access to good family law. They need access to their children. They need access to money and housing and care and respect and kindness. That's what they need access to. But there's none of that because, again, we don't invest in it. So there is, no male-centric support services that pick those things up for men. Men that experience domestic violence, horrendous thing. Still in the UK, for example, men who experience domestic violence, if they report it, that will be recorded as a female statistic.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that we can be really tightening up to get a better picture of really what's happening. And again, I want to emphasize this is not at all excluding what is happening to women. Violence against women is a thing. It is horrendous. We need to be focusing on it. It's something that deserves a lot of support, a lot of funding, a lot of attention.
Yeah, I don't even know where to go from that. Yeah, because there's a lot of things going around at the moment in the government, and we're putting a lot of things in place regarding domestic violence. I just actually interviewed Aaron Schultz from Brisbane. He's from Victoria. Do you know Aaron Schultz? Yeah. So he's doing a lot of work around domestic violence, and
Yes.
he created those men's circles and out in the Outback from the Outback Mind Foundation.
Mm.
Brilliant guy. And I love that he's getting guys to come in and just talk and be open and, be vulnerable, and hopefully they can change the trajectory of their life. Is that the right way to go? Are we, as a society with the government, are we being reactive where we just want to stop this men's behaviour? We just want to stop. I feel like we don't look at the root of where the problems lie, opposed to we just need to stop them and we need to punish them. We need to do whatever. I don't know. I feel like I'm going off tangent a little bit, but
my own experience of being, my experience of sexual abuse and other forms of violence that were perpetrated by men, then I look at those men and I look at where they came from and what happened to them. It's, certainly that doesn't excuse what happened to me at all.
Yeah.
However, I can see the why, and if we can make change, sort of get upstream and make change there to how we're raising boys, then we've got a better chance. But we're not doing that yet. We're still demonizing boys. We're not domesticating boys in the way that we should. I think, there is still so much to be done in addressing masculinity in its pure, beautiful form and raising that up and caring for that, and not automatically, I just can't even imagine what it feels like for a boy growing up at the moment with the constant polarizing toxic masculinity piece and behavior. We talk about male behavior, and where does that come from? And in fact, I was in a conversation with somebody the other day, a female, and she said, well, women are still, charged with the primary, burden of raising kids because dads are still copping out on this. And I said, well, that's a thing, isn't it? So if women are still primarily responsible for raising our boys, then what's happening there? What needs to be done there? I think we need to be looking at something different. And, you look at things like sexual abuse, boys who are victims of sexual abuse, horrendous. Here in Australia, we have one organisation that is largely funded by just the generosity of the few people that run it, that addresses or takes care of men who've been boys who've experienced sexual assault. And guess what? Those boys grow up into really angry men. And then we see behaviour. We see boys who grow up without fathers, without any male role model, because the family law system believes that it's better for children just to be with their mothers. And that causes an issue because there's no male role model. So those boys grow up angry and without good, good role models. Kids need access to both parents. And there's lots of other examples of how boys are growing up without adequate means to understand, how to self-care even. Still to this day, I sit with parents who are trying to make their boys or kids be better. They're 18 and they're lazy and they don't do anything and they don't clean their room and they don't help around the house and they sit on their phones all day. And well, you're the major influence here. So how did that happen? We have to, I was on FaceTime with my daughter and my granddaughter this morning, and she's only 21 months old. And there she is, and my daughter's, saying, put all your things away, clean up after your breakfast. And she's doing a very terrible job of it. She put stuff on the bin, not in the bin, and she wiped more mess all over the walls than she did cleaning up, but she was doing it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We do the same thing. My daughter puts a bag on the back and she walks from the car to the daycare. We don't pick her up and walk her there. She walks herself. She carries her own bag. We'll say,
do you go with her?
Say again?
Do you go with her?
Do I go with?
How old is she?
She's 3, nearly 4.
She goes by herself.
No, but I mean, no.
I just wanted to clarify. That's all.
Oh
Gee,
no,
that's
yeah, no. We
independent.
walk, I hold her hand and she gets across the camera. But I mean, she carries the back herself, and I don't carry her in. She walks there. I mean, I see what you're saying now. That didn't even enter my head. No, I don't just let C close the front door and off you go.
I can see you getting some really angry letters from people.
Yeah, a whole new problems that would cause trauma when she's older, wouldn't it? My parents let me walk to school on my own at 3. No, I mean, she puts the bag on her back. We don't carry it for her. We don't carry her in our arms. We walk her, and same with my son. He puts the bag on and he's in grade 3, but we can see other grade 3 boys having their bags carried for them.
Yeah,
In school, I want the children to struggle with safety, that hardiness. If a kid asks me, I don't know where a pencil is, I've lost my pencil. I'll go, what do you think you need to do then? Oh, I need to look for the pencil. Well, there you go. You've just wasted 10 seconds of your life asking me that question. I want them to struggle in a safe way. I don't feel like we allow children to struggle anymore. I don't know if that's even the right word, but, let them go and find something they've lost. Let them go and fix the
it's
problem.
curiosity. It's just be curious.
Yeah.
Where's my pencil? Where could I look? Where could it have gone?
Yeah.
And that's, curiosity. I think that that's something that is a real driver of, healthy humans. Gratitude, curiosity, kindness, care, they're all kind of within us.
Absolutely.
And, emerging those in your kids costs nothing.
Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.